We'd like to call to order the March 10th, 2022 Clive City Council meeting. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Klein,
Here.
McCoy,
He's here.
He's
Just
here.
had to step out.
Judkins,
Here.
Weaver,
One moment, Councilmember Weaver is in the meeting.
Bell,
Here. Councilman Weaver, you should be able to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
McCoy, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, all present. If you
Wasn't
could rise and join us in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we look at the agenda, there is one change, and that's the removal of consent item AB. Otherwise, I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda and would entertain a motion to approve that with that change.
To approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
nay. The agenda is approved. Next item is citizen presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone in the chamber to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone here in the chamber who would like to approach the council for an item not on the agenda? And Pete, would you check and see if we have anyone online?
Yes, Your Honor. For folks participating online, you can catch my attention using the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You have an icon that says reactions. If you click that, you'll also see the raise hand function.
While Pete is checking on that, I'll just remind everyone that here in Clive, we follow the pillars of character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting our work, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles.
Mayor, I don't see hands going up.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, you'll notice that a number of us here are wearing red today. This is Scarlet Day, and we're supporting East High School. Next, we have an update from Catch Des Moines, Greg Edwards. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice intro slide. I like that.
Wonder where we got that, yeah. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Councilwoman Judkins. My sorrowful thoughts are with you and the loss of your husband recently. So God blessings to you. Thank you for having me tonight. It's our annual report to the Clive City Council. Appreciate your partnership as always. Moving along. So the bad news of the presentation is COVID really punched us in the gut as it did to all of us. Our most recent numbers show we had 414 events canceled. These are conventions, sporting events, meetings, et cetera, throughout the metro, with an economic impact loss of over $330 million. So really a rough couple of years. And I'll show you some of the brighter side today, which is kind of nice for a change. This is a chart that shows hotel occupancy and average daily rates from both going back to 2021 and then current fiscal year, or current year, I should say. The red line is where we are year to date. So you can see we're definitely outpacing the black line, which was last year's occupancies. We're really ended, or we've really started out our fiscal year, which starts July 1, as yours does too. Our budget is higher than what we projected which is a good thing. So obviously occupancies and average daily rates are increasing as we speak. The downside is still not a lot of business travel is happening in the metro area. And as I'll show you on some of these slides, if it really weren't for some of the events that we were able to bring in this past year, things would have looked even totally worse than what they are. Good news for Clive. If you go back to 2019, when really the pandemic all began, metro-wide occupancy was 59%. You were right in line with the entire metro area. Your average daily rate is a bit lower just because of the product you have here, more limited service type hotels. 2020, I guess 2020 was really when the pandemic began. You really led the metro both in 2020 and 21 as far as your occupancy. And I think that held true with a lot of the suburban hotels that were close to interstate. You were able to capture a lot of construction workers and things like that. So that helped boost your occupancy as well. Our outlook. So, going way back a couple of years ago when I was here, I told you we had the best year in our history at the CVB, booking over 380 conventions, meetings, sporting events that year. Obviously, the first year of the pandemic, last year, we booked 125 groups in. Our goal last year was 250, and only got about half of that. So this year, our goal is 220, which is, of course, approved by our board. And so far, we're at about 113. So I have with me tonight, I should have done that earlier, Trina Flack, who I think most of you know is our Vice President of Sales and Experience team. So she's here to defend any of these numbers if it be necessary, because she gives me the numbers. In your packet also is our annual report, which just kind of gives you a quick synopsis. This is a 2-pager of the activities from last fiscal year and some of the objectives for this coming year as well. I think you'd all agree that we're one of the industries that could really spark the industry, spark the economy once the red light went off or the green light went off. And I think we proved that last year. What we do obviously affects restaurants, attractions, shopping, hotels, arts and culture, just about all walks of life in the metro area. And to prove some of that, last year, if you look back at 21, really the first major event to hit the metro was the Dew Tour last May. And it was just kind of a sigh of relief, really to the whole community. Oh my gosh, we got this big international event. It was broadcast on television. It was an Olympic qualifying event for skateboarding. Really got a lot of great press and just kind of kicked things off. A week or so later, the Principal Charity Classic came in, followed by World Pork Expo. We did our first Ironman event last year, which was a half Ironman. We did National Junior High School Rodeo Championships out at the fairgrounds in mid-June. We hosted the U.S. President's Cup Youth Soccer Championships here in Des Moines in July, as well as the Canada USA Canada Lions Club was last September. And in between, we hosted an array of big basketball tournaments. Trina and our team were able to lure a group that was canceled out of McCormick Place in Chicago because of Illinois' restrictions. It was a 3-week tournament deal called the Nike Tournament of Champions. It was an all-girls tournament, 8th grade through high school. Brought in about 1,500 to 2,000 people every week, Wednesday through Sunday. They would leave next Wednesday through Sunday. New group all over the country were here. So really helped boost things as well in July. A couple other interesting COVID stories. We were also able to latch onto a couple different convention groups, which also fell in July. A couple of big ag conventions that came out of Minneapolis because of some of the disarray happening up in that city. So we were able to capture some of that stuff as well. Big events happening this year. We really got a strong year for good events, big events coming in. Everything from the NAIA Men's Volleyball Championships, which will be happening here shortly. World Pork Expo, we expect their numbers to be much higher. Last year, they had about 10,000 people. Normally, they'd have about 25 to 30,000. So we expect hopefully numbers to be back where they should be in previous years. We've been involved with Hy-Vee and the Newton Iowa Speedway with the IndyCar Series, which is in July, which really does again impact the metro. A lot of the people that go to that event stay in our hotels. A lot of the racing teams stay in our hotels. One of the real biggies this summer, which a lot of people haven't heard of, is the State Games of America. And this is a group we booked, I think 6 or 7 years ago. It was supposed to be held, I think, originally in 2021. It'll bring in 16 to 18,000 athletes from all over the country. These are all people who medaled in their own state games. It's actually a joint venture between it's a three-way venture between the Iowa Sports Foundation, Chuck Long's group, the Ames CVB, and ourselves. We've got venues here happening. We're doing a lot of the ice skating events at Wells Fargo and at the new Recplex in West Des Moines, as well as some other events too around town. So should have huge impact. That's in July. Farm Progress Show is again scheduled for this year to be up in Boone. Another huge impact group for our area. Fills about every hotel room in the metro area. That's the end of August. USA Gymnastics, actually they were in town. They're still in town today. They were in town last night and today doing a preliminary site visit. They'll be here with their national championships in June at the Iowa Event Center. Ironman, which Trina gets all the credit for that. She's worked really, really hard to get that event here in the first place. This year, we will host our first full Ironman event in June. And we're also the North American Championship for Ironman. Really a big coup. And kudos really to Trina and our team, and really cities too. Des Moines and West Des Moines in particular have really worked closely with us. I mean, they got to close down all kinds of streets. It's 100 and how many miles total is it?
140 miles.
140 miles. I should know that stuff. Like I'm an Ironman. But it's an incredible thing to take over, and it's really going to be a wonderful event. Last time we hosted 3,000 athletes. They come in 3 to 4 days in advance with their families, pretty high-end people that participate in this. So we're excited about that as well. And then a couple other big ag groups who have signed up to be with us this year: Meat Processors, Meat Science Association, AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, and of course, Eric Klein's favorite group, the American Quilters, coming back. Outlook. So we talked to, and all through COVID, that's what we did. We stayed in contact with key clients. We had formed about 3 years our National Customer Advisory Committee. These are people made up of national organizations. They're meeting planners, sports planners, all walks of life. We did quarterly phone calls, Zoom calls with them. What's going on in their world? What are they hearing? All sides of the country. So we just had a call with them again a couple of weeks ago, and still some of the bigger national groups are still a little hesitant to break out and do stuff. They're still doing a lot of hybrid stuff. We're obviously pushing, get rid of the hybrids, start meeting in person again. State associations are coming back strong. Last fall, we saw they were about half attendance of what they normally would have. The other half were doing hybrid, but they're starting to meet more and planning their meetings as well, which is a good base for us as well. Mentioned earlier, corporate travel. This slide says still non-existent. So we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick there. We still need more. You know, we got to get these people back to work in their offices and supporting local restaurants and shops and all that stuff as well. Again, during COVID, if it weren't for sports groups and agriculture, we probably wouldn't have had very much at all going on. So thank you to those specific markets. Sales strategies this year that Trina and her team have put together. We're still prospecting, which we're prospecting all the time. You know, our philosophy is that the more you fill the funnel, then the more will come down through and the more bookings we can create. We have a ton of qualified prospects. We have over 100 and some bids out in bid form right now. Still, some groups are a little hesitant to make decisions, but some of them are making decisions, and we're getting some great feedback. We've invested in a lot of third-party planners. If you're not familiar with that, these are groups that started probably 6-7 years ago, where these companies have formed, and they'll come to these associations and organizations and say, hey, let us do all your planning for you, and you don't have to do anything. Well, then obviously they collect fees from their hotels and what have you, and that's where they make their money. At first, our industry was totally against them, but we got on board right away and said, this thing's going to happen. So we now are big supporters, big sponsors of a lot of these groups, which have gone a long way too to lure more events in here as well. We're doing a lot of joint marketing efforts. We do a big luncheon every year in the spring in Washington, D.C., where we bring in about 70 different national meeting planners from the D.C. market. This year, we are partnering with
St. Paul, Madison, Providence, Kissimmee, and Albuquerque.
There you go. So good group of folks. Focusing on high-end markets, medical market. If you notice on that previous slide, we're going to host this year a group called Nursing Organization, NOA, Nursing Organization Associations. So this is an association of nursing organizations. So if you're a member of operating room nurses, maternity room nurses, whatever your specialty in nursing, you also belong to this NOA group. So they come in with about 300 people. It's this fall. And it's one of these deals, we lay out the red carpet. I mean, everything's practically comped for them because we're wining and dining them with the hopes of then attracting all of their individual associations to eventually come in and hold their convention and meetings here. Do a lot of other stuff with, we've really made great strides in partnering with both Unity Point and Mercy and have some real ins with them too, and trying to attract more medical kind of stuff too. We started focusing a lot more on our advertising, not just the old fashioned print. We don't do a whole lot of that, but a lot of our social media stuff and stuff that we're getting out there to, again, attract more sports and conventions, what have you. Marketing strategy is kind of the same thing through COVID. We just really wanted to stay in front of the customer. In that case, is a lot of leisure travel. So we did a ton of different videos. You may have seen if you ever go on our website, we've got about 25 different videos on there. We've done some really cool new stuff in the last few months, doing blogs on everything. In fact, we just did a thing on Black-owned restaurants in the metro area. We do stuff, where's the best bars, where's the best tenderloins, all that kind of stuff. So just really spreading the news and really showing off what the metro is all about. So lots of great things have happened in the metro and continue to happen. You're familiar with all this, from the Recplex in West Des Moines to the skate park, the new Grimes complex that's going up, Icon Water Trails. I was on the exec board meeting this morning, and that's moving forward. They've raised a lot of private sector dollars. The new Buck Stadium at Merle Hay Mall, we got a meeting with them, as a matter of fact, tomorrow too. Pro Soccer Stadium downtown is going to happen, no question. Drake Stadium is eventually going to happen. I had to put that out for bid again. The new Johnston Ignite sports facility that they're building up there. The new Bombers Golf and entertainment venue also in Johnston. They just announced a couple weeks ago, and the Prairie Trail Sports Complex up in Ankeny. So a lot of great things happening that obviously will help us to boost more visitors as well. Just came out with our new visitor guide. If you get a chance, pick up a copy of that. I'm really proud of it. You know, we're all talking DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think our team really did a great job of putting some great stories in there and featuring great Des Moines people with a lot of that diversity and inclusion type of messages. The cover, of course, is the famous skateboarder, Mike LaValle. He's so famous, I really know him well. So bottom line, we were still able to bring in over $53 million in economic impact to the metro area last year. Happy to answer any questions or take your comments.
Questions? Eric?
Great job. Certainly appreciate the efforts of all the Catch Des Moines and their staff in some very trying times. I had a chance to go to the skating event. Tremendous success right there. Do we see this being on a regular basis right there, coming back? It's such a great park, Lawrence Park. Do you see them coming back on the Dew Tour on a regular basis?
We do. We hope so. And we hope maybe there's an announcement in the next couple of weeks on another event for the skate park. We also are researching other events. You know, there's all kinds of skateboarding. Monster Energy does one, Red Bull does one. Of course, we didn't even mention the Red Bull Soapbox Derby that's coming in this summer too. But yeah, we're on it. Just like all these new complexes, we're looking for new soccer tournaments to fill and all that good stuff.
And
So
just to follow up with the NCAA tournament here in Des Moines next year, that's very exciting as well. This will be the third time we've hosted it.
right.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's strong. I was talking to your city manager earlier. You know, there's some new laws that came into effect with the state, and I had multiple conversations with our friends at the NCAA, and they pretty much said, no, that shouldn't affect them. I've talked to my colleagues, Raleigh, North Carolina has similar laws in effect there. They host this year's round 1 and 2. Birmingham next year hosts as well as we do rounds 1 and 2. Alabama's got very similar laws, so we feel real good about it. And NCAA feels still really good about us too. So we're in good shape.
Thank you.
Thank
Hoping
you.
we can maybe make a law that you can't wear those Indiana bibs, those overalls.
Those candy stripes are a bad,
Yeah.
those candy stripes are kind of a questionable look. I agree.
Yeah. Weaver's
That-
not here to protect himself.
Are there any more questions? I'm not hearing any more legitimate questions, Greg. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I want to publicly thank Councilman Klein too. He's been a great board member. I don't think he's ever missed a meeting. He's been participating on our budget committee every year, and will participate again this year with our budget process. So appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you
Appreciate
both for being here. We appreciate it. Next, we have our consent items. If I could have a
Move
motion.
approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve our consent. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Ted. Susan, will you be needing to voice vote tonight?
You know, I might because I've lost my screen. It was
Okay.
right here. Until I find it again, please. Yes, I'm a yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And the consent items passed by a vote of 5-0. Thank you. Next, we'll move into our action items, first of which is a public hearing. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Your Honor, for all 4 public hearings this evening, they were published in the Des Moines Register on February 23rd, 2022.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. We received bids last week for this year's patching project. We had concentrated in an area predominantly between 128th Street and Country Club Boulevard. As memo indicated, we only received 1 bid. It was 30% over the engineer's estimate. The initial recommendation included in that memo was to reject the bid based on the overage. Since that time, we've had some additional conversations with other cities in the metro who received bids recently and the contractor who bid the work. Urbandale did bid 2 projects in February with quite a bit more yardage than we had. They did receive favorable bids and were able to move forward with those projects. West Des Moines bid a patching project, more on arterial, some night work that same week as we did. They are going to go ahead and award the bids that they received were about 15% over. So it is something that we're seeing. The contractor who bid the work had a conversation with him just as far as the differences that he saw. Again, the Urbandale project was more favorable to him because of the size of the patches was the indication there. Again, what we put out on the street is not significantly different than what we've done in the past. Of course, issues with rising costs and losing workforce. You know, you hear that everywhere. So that's obviously another issue. The last question to him was, you know, those other communities bid before we did, you know, if we were first in line, would we have had different results? You know, impossible to really predict that, but he didn't feel that it would have been significantly less than what we have before us tonight. The next steps are options again, reject the work and relet immediately. You know, typically when you do that, you need to make some changes, and we just don't really see, you know, the completion date was pretty generous as it was. Don't really see a lot of changes that we could make that would make it more attractive to potential bidders. We could reject and relet later this year, or another option in that same vein, pivot and do some other projects and let yet this year. In our mind, those would need to have completion dates. It's going to take a little time to do a different project and get that ready. We would have to have completion dates pushed out into 2023 on that regardless to attract bids. We could also wait and try to do twice as much or additional work next year. Again, there's uncertainty this year, there's uncertainty in the next 6 months. So the next year, again, not real certain that we'd see significant price decreases in that time period. That would also strain our field staff for the additional work next year. Last option would be to award the project somewhat reluctantly at a premium. Again, with the conversations that we've had since I turned the packet material in last week, we are shifting and would be recommending awarding the project at that premium. We have the franchise fee dollars available. Obviously can't get as much done as we would have liked with those dollars, but you have both options available to you. You have resolutions to reject, you have a resolution to award. So be happy to discuss where we're at further with you here tonight.
Questions for Jim?
Eric,
What's staff recommendation on this?
Again, at this point, we are recommending awarding the project and proceeding with some work this year with the work that's laid out in that project.
You know, since we made the recommendation, we've looked at several different things. We've talked to some cities and
Jeff,
the
make sure
bidding,
you're up to the mic.
the bidding climate itself out there is quite different than it's ever been before. WRA's bid a project, again, not apples to apples, but just what we're seeing on projects, a sewer project with a engineer's estimate of 15 million, got 2 bids of 19 and 24. West Des Moines patching project was about 1.1 and they came in about 1.4. They're proceeding with that award. You know, when you look at what's going on with fuel prices, with labor shortages, with, you know, all the other things, I think when we look forward to projecting to the year, and I wish we had a crystal ball to tell you for sure we knew what was going to happen. I don't think anything's going to change drastically in the next year. I think these prices will prevail. You know, we just won't get the work done is what would happen. And going into next year, I don't know that we'll see a lot different. Unfortunately, I think we have to look at the reality of the situation. The other thing coming down is the Jobs Act. There's going to be a lot more money jumped into projects out there. The ability to get contractors to work on projects is going to get more difficult. They have the ability right now to pick and choose. In other words, the gravy projects, the ones that they see are the easiest, are the ones they're going after. Our project, which is a bunch of little patches here and there, yeah, we'll do it, but we'd rather take this big patch and fewer patches over here. So, you know, I think the reality is for the foreseeable future, our patching type projects are going to be at a little bit of a premium. And I, you know, hate to lose the work that we've looked at to fall behind and try to catch up at some point. You know, it is a bit over what we'd hoped to be, but at the same time, it's accomplishing a lot of what we'd hoped to. We actually put a little bit more into this project this year than we'd had projected as far as the patching schedule went. So reluctantly, but we feel the right move at this point is to make a recommendation to go ahead with the award of this project.
Where do you see us making up that $300,000 shortfall, Jeff, as far as the budget?
I don't know that we'll specifically make up $300,000. I just know that the amount of patches we're putting in, and it may be the new norm. You know, at some point, maybe we can put together some projects. And one of the things we'll talk about is, you know, maybe we combine a lot of our patching with some better type projects that are a little easier to go, to make it easier for them to say this is overall a favorable project that we would like to be on, and not one we just feel we got others we get to choose from we'd rather have. This is one that we want to have. So we'll be looking at how we package, how we do some of those things. And, we've got some projects that we know next year that we're queuing up and getting started that will be a little easier to bid and probably go a lot better as far as what will be attractive to a contractor.
Councilmember Klein, in regard to the dollar amount to cover the excess with this bid, we were already planning to have a secondary project to put out on the street this year because we did plan for a lot more patching dollars in the CIP, upwards of 1.2 to 1.3 million. What this would mean is we wouldn't have a secondary project this year, that this would exhaust those funds for this year. And I think another item that Jeff and Jim and I have talked about is having in the design queue some other kinds of projects. We're doing enough patching now where some of these areas we can come back and do some asphalt overlays in areas that are showing stability, like Woodcrest, where we did a heavy patch where it would make sense to do an overlay of that street for the long-term life. What we're going to look at doing is having some of those asphalt overlay projects queued up. So if we do see a higher bid environment with concrete, maybe we can pivot to asphalt. We don't have those queued up because we haven't, as soon as we get further along on patching, we will be able to do that. So there's some adjustments we want to make at a staff level too, if this is the new bidding environment we're going to be experiencing, and try to make, again, more attractive projects to the bid environment than our traditional patching, which again, we're a smaller quantity than some of our neighboring cities that are doing, Urbandale, and their work that they did last month was upwards of $2 million worth of patching, with bigger patches. And so again, more attractive to a contractor. We're going to have to think through some creative ways of how we make our projects more attractive to the bid environment too.
Any other questions? Anyone here in the chamber who would like to address us on this issue, or anyone online, Pete?
For those online, again, you can use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen to get our attention.
Councilman McCoy?
Just a quick comment on these. I know I've brought it up several years ago, but obviously with oil at 110, 120 and north of that, where are we in these bid processes with recycled shingles and that type of thing, millings, and really kind of forcing that issue into some of these? It's a savings for them. And it's a great savings for us, especially at the rates it was with oil's at.
Yeah.
We've got to propose it though.
You've got some available probably that we could use.
Well, rather than
It's
we
there.
do,
No,
lots
not
of
just you,
people
but I mean,
do.
all over the
It's the
country.
right- it's the
It's
right
out
thing to
there.
do.
And it's the things we're going to have to look at. As we talked about our funding levels, one thing we indicated when we made a presentation last fall was hoping to get up to that 1.5 where we could do a sizable patching project this year, plus an asphalt project every year. Right now at our level, we don't have any asphalt projects scheduled. We're going to quickly pivot, as Matt alluded to, and start getting some of those ready so we can take advantage of that. I don't know right now, and we'd have to look at that, but we want to have some ready. If the oil prices, even with the RAP and the RAS, push asphalt up to a place that's not the time to do it right now, we'll have to look at that price. But we want to get everything ready and make it available so that if we get to a situation where concrete isn't available, maybe the asphalt is the answer to get some done. Prior to every asphalt project, though, we do have to do patching. We have to fix what's underneath. You can't asphalt over broken up concrete. You need the structural support there. So some of that's being done. And as we continue to do patching, there'll be more areas that will be easy to overlay as we move forward. So yes, we can look at that. And as far as making that mandatory, we'll sure work with the contractors that are out there. What we've done so far is we haven't said you can't use it. You can use up to it if you want to. There's certain amounts you can, and left it up to them to give us the most economical price on what they saw was available. If it gets to it, it may be more beneficial for us to start saying you have to, and then we'll definitely take a look at that.
Do we have anyone online, Pete?
Councilwoman Judkins would like to ask a question. Councilwoman?
I really just have a comment. I wanted to thank staff for taking the time to do the due diligence to compare pricing with other communities, because it struck me that it was looking pretty similar to what we're seeing on many projects. So given that our citizens ask about this type of project more than anything else, I'm very pleased to hear a recommendation that we go ahead and proceed with the work.
We'll give thanks to the engineering department. They worked hard on this. I got to give Jim and Brandon a lot of credit. So
Move to close public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post the vote? And the motion to close the public hearing
Move the receipt of bids.
wait, passes by a vote of 5-0. The public hearing is now closed.
Move the receipt of bids.
Second.
We have a motion to receive the bids in a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post the vote on the receipt of bids? The vote to receive the bids passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution awarding the contract to TK Contract for $1,280,275,000.
We have a motion to approve.
We need to also accept the bid and then award the contract. If we might amend the motion, please.
Friendly amendment, and I accept that.
Does a seconder accept it?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Further discussion? All those in favor vote, and then would the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? Resolution approving plans and specs. Passes by a vote of 5-0. All right, Jim, you're still up. And we did have a notice on the public hearing, so we'll move on to Clark Street.
At the same letting, we relet work for the Clark Street landscaping project. This would be plantings in the biocells from the project a couple years ago on 103rd past 105th, and then also picking up a few of the cells that we did last year. Unfortunately, this time we did not receive any bids again. So collectively with staff, we're looking at ways that we can repackage that. Some of the issues there are warranties on those plantings, warranty periods, and how the payments are structured. So there are some ways here that we feel we can get something back out on the street here yet this year, and at least in some of those biocells. So I think your only action tonight would be to open and close the hearing unless there's other discussion.
Eric?
Jim, is there any of that work we can do internally with staff to just continue moving that project forward until we can get a better bidding environment?
Yeah, yes. One thing that we're looking at and evaluating is the tree portion of the plantings to see and ask Richard and the Parks team to look into that. If we could at least get the trees planted here this spring. Again, it's more of a capacity question. Of course, spring is the time where everything hits for the park staff. So we're trying to see if we get the tree planting done while we're trying to get the balance of the plantings back out on the street to then have that as a fall planting this year. To try to, our goal is still by the end of the year to have the completed portions fully planted by the end of the year.
Just to show those residents
Right.
that the project is moving forward. We're seeing some progress
Right.
right there. And I did see a good comment on the ability to utilize volunteers in that area as well. You know, who knows if that could fall into play right there, but just as an option.
Any further discussion? We're looking for notice to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post that vote? Motion to close the public hearing. Passes by a vote of 5-0. That's the only action we needed on that. We have Amanda, I think, for the Emerald Isle rezoning. And again, we've already published the notice on that. Amanda.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight before you, we do have the Emerald Isle rezoning public hearing and first consideration of the ordinance. Here on the table, I put down the development concept plan that I'll walk you guys through. So the total rezoning area is 4.89 acres, but that includes a portion of right-of-way for Emerald Isle Drive, Northwest 156th Street, and the Sheridan Avenue extension that's on city property. So the actual developable site here shown is 4.12 acres. And the site is proposed to be developed with 41 townhome units. The Emerald Isle subdivision is an old county subdivision that was annexed into the city, already developed with the kind of rural single-family homes in the mix of commercial that's out there today. The townhome land use proposed is consistent with the future land use designation, which was residential high density. These townhome units would be closer to our residential medium density requirement. So actually a lower density than what our future land use initially proposed in the 2016 comprehensive plan. And the units have a targeted sale price of $300,000. They're just over 1,800 square feet plus the basement. And they each feature 3 bedrooms and a 2-car attached garage with driveway. For this project to be viable, the developer has asked for some level of city contribution on the public improvements. So what staff has been discussing with them to this point includes the Emerald Isle Drive improvements being deferred to be constructed by the city at a future date. There would be some level of modification needed to Emerald Isle Drive to accommodate the private drive that would in turn exit from it. But the full improvement of that area with the dedicated left and right turn lane at the intersection with 156th Street would be constructed at a later point in time. At this point, we have not discussed any specific timeline for that. That would be dependent on city CIP and budgeting processes. And then for the Sheridan Avenue improvements for the extension to the north, the developer has asked that the city pay for 50% of that, which would be a typical arrangement if the city were not the property owner to the north, that property owner would pay for their half of the roadway improvement. In this case, we are the property owner, so it is kind of traditional that we would pick up half of the cost of that roadway improvement since our property is also benefiting from it. And then you can see the private drive provides circulation in the site, and the main north-south drive would provide the guest parking. There are also sidewalks along Northwest 156th Street, and we would have to determine if it was appropriate to install the Emerald Isle Drive sidewalks with the development or wait until the roadway improvements were installed. So that's yet to be worked out. And then the 8-foot sidewalk recreation trail is being proposed south of Sheridan Avenue. It doesn't show up great here with the aerial behind, but that is this area curving up and around and then eventually connecting over to Stonegate Park. Sanitary sewer would connect to the existing Emerald Isle Drive. The developer faced some challenges getting the grades to work to access that sewer. So they're having to bring in quite a bit of fill for the site, which is part of the challenge with the development costs. And then the water connection would be to the city's existing infrastructure west of 156th Street and south of Emerald Isle Drive would be their connection points. Stormwater management would be fully reviewed with the site plan. But the concept here that they're showing uses a portion of the existing drainage way to the north, improving that to provide some of the water detention requirements. And then some distributed practices throughout the site that are providing some detention and water quality volume. This area here, along over there. There's several of those. So there are still some issues that need to be worked out on the design, but those will be done through the full site plan and preliminary plat review. The landscaping that you're seeing here is generally what's proposed. It is a reduced buffer along the east property line than what we would typically see from a townhome to single family development. Part of that is because that area is also slated for future redevelopment with the high density residential designation in the land use plan. But another reason for that is the property owner, who is actually here tonight, the Reiners, requested that a 6-foot, just typical kind of residential wooden privacy fence be installed along that shared property line with them. And in order to do that with this layout, you can't accommodate a full buffer in this location. And they were happy with that last time we spoke, but I would let her speak to that since she is here tonight as well. And then the parkland dedication would be in the form of that trail improvement and that drainage way improvements. As you can see here, the site is pretty well maxed out with development and stormwater management practices. So there's not land really to dedicate to the city. And if there was, it probably wouldn't be land we would want to put a park on, with Stonegate Park being so close and us owning the land in between. So that trail improvement is largely what the developer is proposing to meet their parkland dedication requirement. And then the kind of design intent of that north drainage way is to create a bit of a linear park to accommodate some landscaping, make that an attractive area through there. As I stated earlier, there were some development challenges. This project, the developer has been working with staff for quite some time now. So the Emerald Isle Drive sanitary sewer, I mentioned the depth of that being challenging for the current grade of the site, needing to bring in a lot of fill to get that gravity flow to work. There's also major water infrastructure coming from the Des Moines Water Works facility over here, and the north portion of the property actually has Xenia's large 24-inch trunk main on it. There's also a lot of major water infrastructure lines running through this area. So it is difficult to do any substantial cut and fill through that portion. You just can't really change the loads that are on those water lines or reduce the coverage on them. And then to look at the proposed townhome designs. This should be considered a draft at this point still. Again, those final design details would be reviewed completely with the site plan amendment. You can see that the developer is proposing a more modern design. We've had some discussions about the kind of standard 20% of each facade being brick or stone requirements. And with this more modern design, staff's not sure that that really provides a lot of benefit. So one of the things we've talked with the developer about is maybe omitting stone on the side facades and doing some more interesting landscaping in that area. Since those sides of the buildings are relatively plain, that would add some visual interest there and kind of break up the larger walls, while also helping offset the cost of the plantings and more expensive siding materials that they're showing. And Planning and Zoning Commission was supportive of consideration for the modern design and the final development agreement language. They felt that this was not a product currently available in the community, and with the price point that the developer is targeting, it would be a high quality product. And then for public comment, the Country Club Glen Townhome Owner Association does oppose the rezoning. They request that the city would leave it as R1 single family and only allow for single family development. They have concerns with the traffic that would be generated from this. We do know from various engineering standards that the traffic generation from a townhome like this would be similar to single family development. And we're looking at likely less than 100 trips a day being added to coming to and from this site based on those engineering manual standards. We have not had a traffic study completed for this specific development, but the Hickman Corridor study did incorporate the future land use plan, which would have considered this as a high density project, which would be looking more like 3 or 4 story apartment buildings being developed on the site. So staff is comfortable that this project is not going to be the drop that tips the bucket on the 156th Street intersection delays that we see today at Hickman. And then we already know from previous conversations that those full intersection improvements that are recommended by the DOT will be implemented at some point in the future. We just aren't sure yet when that will take place. The other public comment that was received at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting was related to the fence on the east property line that I already brought up. And again, the Reiners are present tonight to address that if you would like to hear from them or if they would like to make comment. The developer is also here with some of his team tonight. So if you have any questions for him, he can address those as well. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the first consideration of the zoning ordinance change.
Thank you. Questions for Amanda?
I ask a
David.
tangential question to it.
Sure.
Sure.
That is Berkshire Parkway.
Mhm.
When are we planning on having the light put in at that location in Berkshire?
I believe that was targeted for 2023 completion.
It actually was originally targeted for this year. We did receive bids on that project. So I think that was last fall. right, Jim, I think it was. And the bids came in very high. And also we had some issues with kind of construction timing of when the DOT was going to allow. We're actually in the process of getting that ready for rebid. Likely with the lag time on getting mast arms in terms of the supply chain challenges, it probably will be a 23 completed project now. We were hoping it to be later in 22, but that is in our queue to get accomplished.
So I could see that being the thing that would help reduce some of the concerns about this particular road. And that's what I've been hearing from people.
Right.
As I've been talking to them.
Yep.
Yeah, that and the traffic signal that would be completed with not completed with the construction of the fairway, but that is part of the development agreement for the fairway construction at 161st. Yep, so that will also be signalized in the next 3 years or so.
So that'll give a couple more signalized intersections that will take load off of 156th Street for the neighborhood northwest of 156 and Hickman. 2 more additional controlled access points.
Thank you.
Other questions, or is there anyone in the chamber or developer that would like to address the council on the matter, or do we have anyone online, Pete? Michael?
Real questions for you real quick. The drainage way that you talk about on the north,
Mhm.
is that not part of the requirement for the development?
For improving that drainage way?
Correct.
Yes, it would be part of the final plans that be worked out through the site plan and
The
preliminary plat.
requirement, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't see the requirement equaling a park dedication, right? They have to do it for development anyways. And you had mentioned that between the drainage way and the bike trail, it would
Mhm.
be in lieu of the dedication.
Mhm.
It's a requirement. That's a stretch for me to
Yeah.
buy into.
I can clarify that a little bit. The conversations that we've had with the developer would exclude the stormwater improvement costs from that parkland dedication. So the parkland dedication would be met through the actual trail construction and surfacing and the additional enhanced landscaping in that area. So this doesn't actually require a large parkland dedication. I don't have it in my notes, but I think it's 0.6 acres. 0.69, thank you, Rich. So it's not a huge amount of area. So the cost equivalent of that, we do think can be covered through the trail and the additional landscaping that they would install. And that cost is derived by taking the purchase price of the property per acre multiplied by the required parkland dedication.
So to the comment earlier, the drainage way being part of the park dedication is not
It
a fact.
It would be the enhancements beyond the stormwater management that would make the parkland dedication.
I guess I need a better handle on that, maybe after this, before the next round.
Mhm.
Okay. And then tell me a little bit more about this fence to the east instead of landscape berms. You got me as a big believer, landscape berms over
Mhm.
the time and really selling them. And now we're suddenly putting up a 6-foot fence where we have said no in the past in some areas.
Yes,
And I
so
keep going
this.
back to the fire
Sorry.
police station and that type of thing. No
Yes.
fence, but berms. I like it.
Mhm.
And so you finally got me onto that. Now we're switching gears again. I don't like
Yes.
fences. It's in 10 years, who's gonna keep up the fence, right?
Yep, absolutely. So I can expand on that a little bit. So this is kind of a unique situation where it is an area that the city is actively hoping to have redevelopment take place in. And that our future land use plan has designated that all for a substantial change in the existing use, which is that rural single family layout. So what staff had originally talked with the developer about was doing a reduced buffer that did not include the berm and just had some heavier plantings concentrated along that property line. So including the berm would limit the connectivity and integration of this townhome development with what we expect to take place in the next 5 to 15 years on the property to the east of that. That would be additional townhome or even potentially a little bit higher density residential development. So this case is somewhat unique in that redevelopment phase, future land use expectation. So the property owners actually requested that they didn't really care if there was a bunch of additional trees, They just really want that fence because they valued that privacy and keeping children or anyone who might live in the townhomes from being on their property. So that was at their request that they wanted just a standard 6-foot wooden privacy fence. That is also consistent with what council had approved with the discussions of the would have been come and go development just south of this property to kind of give those existing homeowners that continued sense of privacy while recognizing that this will be a redevelopment. So realistically, in 10 years, that fence is probably coming down for a redevelopment project. If not, it would fall on this owners association to do the maintenance since it would be on their property.
Again, something I think I want to look into a little bit more after this phase and into the next phase. When you talk about connectivity and the worry of connectivity in the later, so no berm, but then we talk about heavy vegetation to get, so there is no connectivity to that area. So the berms to me seems like a more long-term connectivity solution than heavy bushes and trees and that type of thing. So it's either one or the other. I mean, I guess I could buy into that. The fence is for factual coming down after the next development, but it's really not the choice of the next developer to take that fence down, right? It's on this property homeowners association's land. There's a lot there. I don't understand how it was explained, but again, maybe I can get that cleared up off.
Yeah, tonight we're just looking at the
Yes.
first reading.
Yeah.
So further, did you have anything else, Amanda? I'm sorry.
No, but those are certainly things that we can expand on more with the second consideration.
Was there anyone online, Pete?
No, Your Honor.
Anyone in the chamber who wants to address the council on this particular issue? If not, we're ready to close the public hearing.
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Further discussion? Hearing none, would the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post that vote to close the public hearing? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move that ordinance number 1118, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Second.
First reading, and we have a second on that. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post the vote on the first reading of proposed ordinance 1118? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Amanda, Country Club Glen Plat 12. Again, we have posted the notice on that.
Yes, so tonight, this is a portion of the consideration for the Fairway development that we had, I believe it was at your February 10th meeting. So at that time, the site plan and preliminary plat were approved, and one of the considerations of that approval was relocating the landscape buffer that had been established early on with the larger development concept that thought that this area that is now going to be a stormwater outlot. Oh, sorry, Matthew, can you show the camera? That this area that is now dedicated as a stormwater outlot would have been residential development. At the time, this kind of blocked out landscape buffer was established. So now that is not the location where the residential development will take place. That will just be a stormwater outlot, and the landscape buffer should be relocated to the shared property line with the existing townhome residence to the north. So this tonight is the formal public hearing to vacate that redundant landscape buffer that is within the stormwater outlot. And then approval of the final plat as well.
All right, questions for Amanda? Anyone in the chamber who wishes to address the council on the matter? Eric?
So if that landscape buffer, what's the new usage for that?
That's the stormwater outlot and detention that was designed with the site plan.
So just storm water detention area right in there?
Yep, so it's still landscaping in this area,
That's on that
landscaping
berm
around the
behind
building.
there Next to the residential area.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
So that's the landscape will be on the berm then, is that?
Yes, so this is half of that buffer exists similar to the development that's over this way, half of the 25-foot buffer was established at the time that those were platted. So it would just be getting the other half to complete that 50-foot buffer dedicated here tonight.
David?
What will they actually be doing? I know that area and I know that as of right now, when it rains heavily, just to the west of those townhomes, that can fill up very, very quickly. Is this going to help ease some of that water in that area?
The area west of the townhomes is actually the detention basin for that development. So it will remain. I would assume that it will fill up at about the same rates because they maintained that in their stormwater design for the fairway, which will go on this lot, and this lot 2, which would be for future commercial development. This area where they're doing the detention basin improvements was modeled to support this.
Okay.
So I
That's
would
what I just want
expect.
to make sure that the rest of that new water coming in isn't going to be hitting that one.
Correct. It will not be going to the existing basin to the northwest.
Thank
you.
Pete, do we have anyone?
One moment. Again, for folks participating online, if you would like to comment, you can use the raise hand function. I do not see hands going up, Your Honor.
All right, if there's no further discussion, then we're ready to close the public hearing.
Move to close public hearing.
In a second?
Second.
Mr. Bell. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post the vote to close the public hearing? That passes by a vote of 5-0. The public hearing is closed.
Move the resolution approving vacation of buffer easement.
We have a second for the resolution.
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote on the vacation? Would you revote, please?
Eric's isn't it? He doesn't have it up. I just did mine.
Could you give a voice vote then, please?
Aye.
Ted, could you, thank you.
Michael, you're
Mine went through.
aye, okay.
Mine went through.
So is that 5 ayes? That is. Passes 5-0 for the vacation.
Move the resolution approving the final plat.
We have a second?
Second.
Second? Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote?
Again?
And that passes by a vote of 5-0. This is the end of our public hearings, but Amanda, you're still with us for Commerce Park Plat 4.
I am, thank you. Matthew, could you share the doc cam again? Oop. So tonight we have a preliminary and final plat for Commerce Park Plat 4. The only thing that is changing on this property from the development that took place in 2019 and 2020 is literally the property line dividing the property. The current owner and developer of that development has received an offer on one of the buildings and is interested in possibly accepting to sell one of them into separate ownership. So they were pursuing this plat that would allow that transaction to take place. Again, there is zero change proposed to the existing site conditions with this. We did receive a public comment relating to a fence on the west property line. There's actually quite a bit of history on this property as it was originally part of the larger development with the Iowa Lottery building and the commercial that's just to the east. I believe DeWay's did in around 2005. And that original development plan had some extensive discussion on the fence on that property line. The homeowners at that point west of this did not want a fence. They wanted the landscaping preserved and the grade difference of the site. They didn't feel that the fence was necessary and they did not want any of the trees to be removed. So the decision to not include a fence again during the site plan in 2019 and 2020 was brought up again. And at that point, the neighbors still primarily did not wish for a fence to be installed. There is some landscaping in this portion of the site right here that has died since the site plan and development took place. Staff's recommendation would be that that is most appropriate to be addressed through the site plan compliance process. The developer is actually aware of those tree plantings. We had already discussed it before this public comment came in, and they are prepared to replant those in this upcoming planting season. So that is being addressed. The other item that was included in that public comment was in relation to a sign that was installed on the west side of building 1 here. The site plan did require that any signs installed have a timer to automatically shut off at 8 p.m. The staff member that reviewed that permit did not catch that requirement and also made a miscalculation in the sign area that this business was permitted to have. So they actually have a sign on the south and west facades. There was not a specific restriction to not allow signs on the west facade, but it is likely that if that calculation would have been done correctly, that the western sign would not have been installed. Since it was installed with a permit, staff would prefer to simply have a timer installed on that and not take any further action to have the sign removed at this point. We believe with the timer being installed, as was required with the site plan and the tree replacements taking place, that will largely address the public concerns that we received. So with that, we would recommend approval and then allow for staff to address those concerns independently from this process.
Thank you, Amanda. Questions for Amanda from the council, Eric?
So obviously the neighbors are concerned about the illumination. They're concerned about the trees, you know, being replaced right there. I mean, what leverage do we have to make sure that happens? You talked about staff ensuring that gets done. You know, what leverage do we have from the city to make sure that happens?
Yes, so for the tree replacements particularly, that is a very standard process that we have. We go through with frequently commercial properties on that site plan compliance. Our code enforcement has the ability to enforce any deviations from the site plan. The ultimate remedy for that, if the property owner refused to come into compliance, would be court action. I don't believe that we will need to take those steps in this case. They're very willing to replant the trees that have died since the original development. And we've been discussing some alternative species that might be better suited to the soils in that area. So they're evaluating that with a landscaper to see and hopefully have the trees a better chance of
The
survival.
problem has been ongoing for some time. The trees didn't just die yesterday, right? I mean, they've been dying, you know, they've been down for some time, irritating the citizens right there. So
I'm not sure when they died. I believe they were removed this past fall, but I'm not sure on that because this was the first complaint I'd received on it.
So, you know, I would be more comfortable, as Councilman Klein said, since this won't come in front of us again, to put those conditions in now. If it's okay with the owner, then let's put the conditions in the approval of the motion with the tree, right? We're going to approve this final plat with the additional tree plantings, knowing that that is going to happen, and the timer, right? That then I think gives us a little better stick on the legal side, but I'd let that be the legal counsel. I hate thinking we got to go to court for them. And we didn't put anything in the language that says they have to do it.
Just a trust but verify thing, I would think.
Legal counsel? You wish to weigh in?
Well, if I understand Councilmember McCoy's, that I know who you are. Yeah. No, just if I understand what your proposed motion would be, it would be to move to approve with the condition, you know, for the lighting timer and the replacement of the trees. I mean, you can certainly make that motion. The city still has its other remedies through code enforcement and otherwise with respect to the trees, but you can certainly make that motion. And we do have some alternative remedies or leverage, if you will.
I still like having it right there. I mean, let's put, I agree we have other remedies, but let's get it out there in a public meeting right there that we expect you to do this.
Do we have anyone here in the chamber who wishes to address the council on this matter? If you do, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
So you might want to put that back up.
Right here.
Yeah. Doug Van Dam. I live at 13171 Forest Circle. So I live here. Okay. I was not the person, but most likely my neighbor here talked about the other things. Just for background, I mean, those trees have only been in a year. I mean, they died pretty quickly. So it's not, hasn't been a ongoing source of, they were put in, nobody bothered to turn the irrigation on. It was a problem anyway, but hopefully they can fix that. As you say, maybe some different trees. I don't know. But my question then is, fortunately, the way my house is built, my bedroom doesn't actually see that lit sign all night. But my recollection is we were not going to allow any lit signs on this building at all. Do you remember on that side of the building?
Yes, the only note on the site plan was requiring that timer that would shut the illumination off automatically at 8 p.m. I wasn't the staff that did this one, unfortunately.
Okay.
No longer.
I
with
mean,
us,
that would
but-
still, I guess that would still
Mhm.
work for me, kind of
Are
depending.
you referring to that next building?
So I'm referring to the next building, the building that's currently vacant. And in terms of, I mean, I don't know what's gonna go in there. But
I think Amanda can probably assure us that if there's signage, that signage probably won't recur because we got staff on top of it now.
okay,
Yes.
that was my point.
Thank
Thank you.
Yep.
You got Amanda on your side, bulldog.
Now I know Amanda's name, so.
Yes,
Call her often, early and often.
absolutely.
Your Honor, we do
All right.
have another person
Oh,
who'd
we
like
have
to
a,
comment.
yes, go ahead. Could you identify yourself,
One moment, please.
please?
Mark, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hi, Mark Whitty and Martin Kathy Whitty. We're at 13184 Circle, right next to Doug. And I appreciate and concur with Doug's comments. We're the ones that are really impacted by the light. And that's been our concern from the get-go. We didn't realize that there's going to be a lighted sign, which actually shines. If you look in our backyard right now, where we're standing in our kitchen, you can very well see that light. It's kind of like it's a very, very bright light for us. And our bedrooms are on the backside of the house too. So we do get impacted by that. We were kind of surprised that that was going to be that way. It wasn't our understanding that there was going to be a sign there. With regard to the trees, Doug is absolutely correct. When the trees were put in, they died fairly quickly. And we've had experience, unfortunately, over the years, back when DeWay first came to us and met with us about building that. We actually kind of wanted the fence because when those cars park back there, they do, which they do right now, when the sandwich shop, which with the sign is open, their headlights again shine right in our backyard, right into our back windows. And so the more foliage, the more trees we have, the better. We've planted trees, unfortunately, back there ourselves. And I don't know if it's the soil or what it is, but we've had terrible luck as far as maintaining trees that will stay alive. We tried to create our own buffer. So really do appreciate the motion and whatever you can do to ensure that that's taken care of. Our other concern is that, and we certainly don't object to the property sale at all. All for it, but if the subsequent owner comes in and we are faced again with trees that are dying, what's the requirement to replace those, or how do we certainly don't want to be going to court to enforce these things if there's a simpler remedy. So, but no, thank you for it. We do appreciate you hearing our concerns.
Well, thanks, Mark. I think Amanda can address the speed with which we might be able to get them to get that timer in and get that light off.
Yes, absolutely. So staff has reached out to the business contact that the developer provided for Capriotti's that has the lit sign. So we've initiated that contact and are waiting to hear back from them about getting that timer installed. In order to address any trees that would die in the future, the most expedient way would be for anyone who noticed the dead trees to contact staff in the community development department. So if Mark and Kathy saw that some had passed, they could call us and let us know that there was an issue. So we could immediately go do a site inspection and start that process, hopefully within that same planting season, when it became evident the trees were dead.
Do we have the ability to do any soil testing in that area? It sounds like maybe there's something else going on.
The city could probably go do soil testing. I don't know if we would have an option to force the property owner to do soil testing. But those kits are relatively inexpensive. So if there were continued problems, that's probably something we could work out at a staff level.
And I think as Amanda mentioned too, is that they're working with a landscaper to maybe find a better tree mix for this particular soil. And so I think it's definitely giving that a try and seeing if that will work. And again, I think staff will stay on top of this area, knowing it's been an ongoing concern.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. The amended motion, would that go with the approval of the?
Your Honor,
preliminary-
there is another person who'd like to make a comment. Yep,
Thank
one
you,
moment.
Pete. Go ahead. Please identify yourself.
Reed, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Reed Tamasia. I am the, with Next Phase Development, I am the property owner and developer for 13101 University. And we do, just to address some of the comments here, we do have higher acidic soils in that area. What we found out with the blue spruce and the spruce varieties that we planted there. Originally, with the landscape plan, we didn't just plant the minimum amount of trees because of the sensitivity to the two neighbors here. So we actually planted more trees that were currently shown on our landscape plan. One variety of excess trees that we did plant were white pines. They seem to do better in acidic soil, and those are currently behind Doug's house doing well. We had proposed to Amanda to swap the blue spruce variety for the white pines, which I think we're in agreement on. We currently do have a 75-foot landscape buffer on that side of the property that was original to the plat back in 2005. So yeah, I guess anything else that we needed to do there, we would have the trees replaced currently if we were sitting in the middle of May. Since the ground's frozen, we're not able to do those at this time. And I guess just my concern is if we have, I guess, city remedies that would, I guess, make us replant those trees at any given time when we're able to, given the weather. If we approve this plat with a, I guess, with the, how I'm trying to say it, with the tree plantings and the light associated to it, at what point does that take place? Does that take place tonight for approval, or does that take place in the future? The reason I ask that is for the sale of the property.
Yeah, so I believe the question is if the council puts the conditions that the trees have to be replanted and the light timer put on for the sign, if that would stop the approval tonight. My understanding of the motion is the motion was to approve it tonight with the condition that those items be done. That gives staff the opportunity to follow up with you on those items, but would not prohibit the recording of the final plat and transaction to take place.
Mr. Tamasia, this is Christina Stanger, legal counsel of the city. Is the nature of your question a timing question because of the pending sale?
Yeah, I guess basically it was relating to the condition. When does that condition have to be approved, I guess?
You mean, when does the condition have to be satisfied? I think the intention from Councilmember McCoy was to approve, essentially amending 5A to reflect a motion to approve the preliminary plat with the conditions of fulfilling the prior obligation of the tree requirement and adjusting the lighting to reflect the timing concerns. Is that how I understand your?
Correct.
Does that help clarify your question, Mr. Tamasia?
We have every intention to replace the trees. It's more or less a weather issue for us, and adjusting, getting the current business owner to put a timer on their light. So that was just, I guess, one of my concerns. So yes.
When did those trees die?
Oh, sorry, I'll let Reed answer.
Oh, we planted those trees in early 2020. It would have been, I believe, March. We had an early spring there. So those trees within the last year, over really basically this summer, we lost some very early, but some later.
So I guess that's part of why I'm doing the condition is, I mean, knowing they were dead last summer, why not replant them in the fall? You know, if you knew there were dead trees and you had concerned neighbors. So that's why I'm a little bit forced to put the condition on to make sure it actually happens this round.
Yeah, so really what it was a discussion between myself and the association. That whole Commerce Park platform is managed by Elwell. So everything outside of the foundation is supposed to be managed by the association. We're not in control of the association. We're part of the association from an owner standpoint. And so it's going through the correct channels. If they're not going to do it, then we're going to step in and do it ourselves.
Any other questions from anyone? Again, what we're looking for is approval of the preliminary plat with the conditions as stated.
I move to approve for a preliminary plat with conditions stated.
We have a second?
Second.
Everyone clear on that? It was the two conditions that Councilmember McCoy articulated and legal counsel repeated. Further discussion? Hearing none, would the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post that vote? And the plat with conditions.
Ted, do you need to
I
voice
can't
in?
get it through.
Okay, thank you.
Plat with conditions is approved by a vote of 5-0. Next is a resolution approving the final plat.
Move for resolution approving final plat.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post that vote? And the resolution approving the final plat approved by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Ryan, it looks like we're back to swimming pools, something we're all looking forward to.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My hope is with the third approval tonight, we can put swimming pools behind us and maybe welcome some warmer weather in. Tonight, third consideration for the swimming pool code amendments. If you remember or recall the last couple meetings, we talked about some of the major amendments that were going into this cycle of code. One of them was the reduction of a 6-foot fence requirement down to a 48-inch tall 4-foot fence requirement. And that was to be consistent with our neighboring communities. 90% of the other communities are on the 4-foot fence. So the consistency side, we were striving to be consistent in the code application there. The second amendment was to allow for chain link fencing within our jurisdiction. Now note, there are some communities or some of the developments that don't allow chain link. So in those situations, obviously they would not be allowed to install chain link around a swimming pool. But the general residential where it is allowed, they would be allowed to do a chain link with 1 3/4 inch maximum link style. If it was larger than that, they would have to do some kind of slat design, fasten high and low on that to secure safety of that. The third was a little bit of language change on the definition for some of the landscape features like fish ponds and garden ponds and rear yards. It was to offer up some options in lieu of just having the fence be the requirement around some of these that are identified as swimming pools by definition. So what we did there is we allowed some options for folks who maybe don't want to install that fence. In lieu, we're securing security and other measures by some of these amendments. So that's the 3 large amendments. We have not received any comments from the general public or questions. if you all have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Questions for Ryan?
I move that ordinance number 1114 be considered for the third time, placed upon its passage and adopted.
We have a second.
Second.
A motion and a second on the ordinance. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, would the council please vote? And will clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0. Ordinance number 1114 is declared to have been enacted.
Thank you.
Ryan. Now we're moving on to our GEO bonds.
Mayor and council, you heard from John Danos back on February 3rd. He discussed the importance of reviewing the preliminary official statement. The staff provided it to you well in advance of this evening's meeting. Staff recommends for council to set the public hearing for the sale of the GEO bonds, which will help fund the capital improvement plan projects listed in the packet memo and authorize the preliminary official statement.
Questions for Elizabeth? Again, we're just setting the hearing.
Move the resolution setting sale date 3/24/2022 for general obligation corporate purpose bonds series 2022A.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that? So the resolution setting the sale date passes by a vote of 5-0. Matt, collective bargaining.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're excited tonight to bring forward to you the second of two collective bargaining agreements. As the council will recall, at our last meeting, you approved a 3-year agreement with our police union. What's before you tonight is a 3-year agreement that matches up the same time frame with our fire union local 5055. Included in the packet is the agreement, the proposed agreement that's been ratified, that was ratified by the fire union earlier this week on Sunday. And included in the packet was kind of the highlight of the items that are included in this agreement. One thing we're excited about, at least in terms of the work with the bargaining team with the fire union, is we're able to really get us to another level in terms of competitiveness on the fire wages, the firefighter, paramedic level wages with some of our surrounding agencies. It's very important to us to invest in our staff and make sure we have competitive rates, wage rates for our employees who provide these critical services to our community. And I think we're doing that here with this collective bargaining agreement. We have some other things that are also included in this agreement in terms of recognizing when we have our union members stepping into acting officer roles and paramedic training roles, to make sure we're recognizing them for their experience and education in those roles. And also longevity bonuses, as well as we have more tenured staff coming online. So really appreciate the work with the fire union. I know they are here tonight as well in person as well as online, and appreciate the work that we were able to do with them, and would recommend your approval of this collective bargaining agreement.
Questions for Matt? If not, we're looking for a resolution.
So I move for resolution approving collective bargaining agreement for the Clive Professional Firefighters Local Union 5055 from July 1st, 2022 to July 30th, 2025.
Second.
We have a resolution and a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And then would the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next is just a pay request, requires simple motion.
Pay request number 2 to RDG.
A quick question on that. How come this wasn't a consent? How come it's an action?
Because we've got a council member that has to abstain from that.
And Your Honor, this is Susan. I will be abstaining from this vote.
So we have a motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the pay request. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post the vote? So that passes by a vote of 4. with one abstention, I believe.
Yeah, that's the last vote.
Yeah, we're not looking at the right one, but I'm pretty confident it's 4 with one abstention, just by my count. Is that your count too, Matthew, officially?
Not sure why it's not, yeah, it's not updating, but that is what the vote was.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, with that, we'll move to our reports and we'll start down here. Pete, what have we got?
Thank you, Your Honor. First, wanted to thank the Chamber of Commerce today for hosting or coming to the Clive Public Safety Center for a fantastic event. I'll leave it to Mayor Edwards to talk about some of what he presented and shared, but the Chamber did a really nice job convening a group of folks, and we were able to take a number of people who hadn't been through the facility through again. And one thing I will be putting up on our city's YouTube channel tomorrow will be another cut, most recent cut. I'm hopeful it's the final cut of our hype video for the public safety building that features Chief Rowe and Chief Dynamo. It came out very, very nicely, and we look forward to continuing to do work to tell that very positive story as the stormwater features come online, as the weather gets nicer. There's a lot of storytelling we need to do around the Clive Public Safety Center.
Came out really well and Venemo was in it.
Editing.
Editing.
The magic,
Photoshop.
Hollywood magic, Hollywood magic. Anybody who's traveled around Clive, especially on Hickman Road and 128th, has been starting to feel the disruptions caused by the DOT's project. The sign that just generally says, expect delays from February through November is little, but kind of bite my tongue a little bit, grit my teeth a little bit every time I'm going through there. We want to work closely with our partners at the DOT here to get good information out to residents. Jim did a nice job putting a project page up, even though it's not exactly our project, put a project page up on cityofclive.com. We'll also be talking about it in the upcoming newsletter. The challenge we'll have is that the Iowa DOT is not going to be communicating with us on a day-to-day, week-to-week, stage-to-stage basis. We'll do our best to get information from them, but our message is going to need to be to residents, expect delays. It's going to take some time, but we're going to be adding capacity that long-term makes moving through the corridor safer, makes it more efficient. And especially once we get the intersection project done at the interstate. But for many, many years in a row now, we should expect there will be disruptions, and we'll do our best to communicate that to residents so there aren't surprises. The last piece of good news I have, a better piece of news I have, is that we've started working with our friends at Polk County to come up with the final agreement for the urban water quality initiative grant that we received from IDALS. We're now expecting that we'll get that full award for the grant program, which means that we are going to be rapidly preparing to recruit Clive residents who want to do a soil quality project on their property here in 2022. More likely than not, our recruiting efforts will be in the spring and the summer, and then we will be doing the applications once we get into the fall. But it's a complicated process because we've got to go and understand from contractors how we can set them best up for success and get the best price per square foot of soil that we're going to be putting down. We'd like to work with our friends at Metro Waste as well to talk about how we procure the right materials and how we might be able to stage those in a way that is going to make things most efficient. Probably the biggest thing we need to do, though, is do the storytelling. So we're working with the Parks Department now with some of the compost and other material we already have, and equipment that we'll be able to borrow from Polk County and that we already have on our in our sort of stable of equipment to do a test plot in a Clive Park still this spring. So as it's greening up, we'll be able to show people what it looks like when you initially put it down, how it then gets incorporated into your lawn, and then how it starts to support a healthier lawn that gives you a better look and some more resilience to drier periods of time. It's going to be a lot of storytelling, but we're looking forward to it.
Thanks, Pete. David.
So no new reports other than the fact that I was actually at your presentation today, and I wanted to just share, I didn't get to go to the ribbon cutting for the public safety building due to military obligations, but I got to go today, and our city manager showed a whole nother skill set of being a wonderful tour guide. All the detail orientation that he put us through and showed us that entire building was very much appreciated. So thank you very much, Matt.
Did you get from being a project manager for 8 years?
Eric.
Yes, Mayor, attended several different Chamber of Commerce ribbon cuttings along with Councilman Bell. the liquor cabinet and Benchmark athletic rehabilitation. So I want to welcome those two new businesses to Clive.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. Well, as Pete mentioned, I did deliver the State of the City address. It was much like the State of the Union. I was interrupted frequently by applause. And I'm sure we've got a recording to put up on YouTube, don't we, Pete? Oh, we didn't get it?
We did not miss the applause part, but I think the rest is recorded.
So, Pete, if we can get a PDF of the slides out to the council, that'll hit the high points of some of the points that
Be a response published to that State of the.
there may
State of the
well be. There were efforts to do so. Anyway, Michael.
No report. I have one comment though from a resident. I don't hear this very often, but to you, Chief Benema, they got pulled over. I didn't even really ask why, but they said they had the most pleasant interaction for real with your officer. It might have been because they got a warning. But they did say that it was actually a very pleasant interaction with the officer from Clive. So that's good to hear. Yeah.
Thank you. Council?
We do have one cleanup item from earlier this evening on the agenda. If I could redirect council members' attention to item 8. When we voted, the motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement, according to the record, reflected an end date of July 30, 2025, as opposed to the agreement date of June 30, 2025. So the proper procedure to, I guess, clarify the council's direction on that is a motion to reconsider that action. And then a new motion to approve at the proper date as proposed in the agreement.
The agenda gave the correct.
The agenda
dates.
and the agreement are both correct.
The resident
Hooked on Phonics did not work for me. Apparently.
It's okay. It's okay. We just need you
I
to
would
read
entertain
the
a motion to
agenda.
reconsider.
So moved.
We would
Further
like,
discussion?
thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Did we get Susan?
Hi.
Okay, so we have a motion to reconsider. What would the new resolution be?
If you could go ahead and renew your motion there on
Yes,
item I,
ma'am.
on item 8.
Renew the motion to the resolution approving collective bargaining agreement, Clive Professional Firefighters Local Union 5055, July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We've already got all the ayes. That passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Madam Council, for clarifying.
Thank you,
Do
Your
have
Honor.
further matters?
Nothing further. I blame the clerk.
Make sure we let the union representatives know that already left that we canceled that motion of the contract and reconsidered it while they were
Just
gone.
so Councilmember Bell knows, that isn't some kind of hazing or anything that we do to new council members. So that was just, we didn't catch it fast enough in the moment, so we apologize for that.
You get paid the big bucks.
Tonight, and he is in transit to Kansas City, but I'm going to ask him to speak a little bit. Richard Brown, on his way to spring break, as well as I know a number of other people, is I wanted him to just to give an update to the council a little bit on the work that's going on with the Harbach Center. There's a lot of things happening pretty quickly, pretty exciting. We're going to have some formal kickoff announcements and information coming up around the early May. But ahead of that, we're going to try to find some time to get the council out there to see some of the work that park staff has been doing a great job. And we have a mural going up in the community center as a part of the Art Along the Trail program. So I wanted to give Richard, if you're there still, an opportunity to kind of give the council an update on all the work that's going on there.
I am here, Matt. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you a little bit. Not the greatest, but.
Is this any better?
We'll go with it.
Okay, so just a quick couple things on the Harbach Center. This week, we are doing kind of a soft opening, hosting some of our first programs there. One of the things we've been able to do is work with Crestview to actually give flyers out for programs in March to all the students in the school, to just kind of a soft opening, get people to start thinking about that the facility is there and that there are more things coming and opportunities to submit ideas for programming or things they might want to do there. We'll again do the same thing in April, and then starting to look at probably May 2nd, have actual regular hours at the facility. So right now we're looking at Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2 to 6 and Saturdays from 10 to 2. We'll start getting people in there, start seeing what they want to do. And then when summer comes, we might adjust those hours or try some different programs, but very, very excited that the facility is coming along to the point that we can start having some people in there and really just looking forward to getting to know the community better and finding ways for us to interact with them and offer these services.
Thank you, Richard. And I wanted to ask the council, just kind of a calendar check that first Thursday in April 7th, so it's a non-council meeting Thursday. Again, just throwing a date out there, we can bounce around some more dates in early April to see. I would love to get you just you all out there for kind of a tour with Richard and the crew to really talk about the spaces, see the spaces before we really start to ramp up programming and later April, and then the kickoff in May. Want to give you all an opportunity to do that. So just again, throwing it out there for right now. We can bounce back and forth some dates, but I know Thursdays sometimes tend to work. Maybe they don't.
Put that in your update.
Yeah,
all, Matt, and then
we can do that.
Look at schedules that way.
We can do that. Thanks, Richard. Safe travels. Also wanted to mention just a couple key dates coming up here in March. Obviously, we have the candidate forum on March 22nd across the street over at the special events building that the Clive Chamber is hosting, with the special election coming up at the end of the month on the 29th. And then also just a reminder, I had the right day of the week in my week, corrected it in my weekly update today. It's Friday, April 29th is that morning is our staff appreciation breakfast that we'll have at the Public Safety Building. We'll actually do it in the apparatus bay. So we're kind of moving that around, which will be a lot of fun to get all the staff together and have you all with us serving breakfast. And then lastly, a couple days next week, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll be over and Friday morning over in Iowa City for the Iowa Municipal Managers Institute. So that is now back to an in-person training. So other than that, Your Honor, that's all I have for you tonight, other than what's included in my weekly update that I sent earlier today.
Thank you, Matt. Matthew, any correspondence?
I do not have any tonight.
Very good. Any other matters for the good of the order?
Yes, Your Honor, did you want to ask Ted and me to make any comments?
Yes, of
Maybe
course.
you.
Please
You,
do.
Susan.
Susan,
All right.
we'll start with you.
All right, well, just briefly, this week there were meetings of the Bravo Board, and the announcement will be coming out tomorrow on the latest round of grants that are being awarded. Everything's embargoed until then. And then there was also a meeting this week of the MPO's Environmental Roundtable. And it's helpful to know that they are part of a national organization that helps them support cities in applying for grants that have an environmental connection. So staff will want to make sure we're taking advantage of that appropriately. And then lastly, I really wanted to thank Richard Brown and the park staff. They worked to get a plaque on a bench that had been placed in Bob's honor, done in time for him to see it before he passed away. And that really meant a lot to me that got done. So thank you to the Parks Department, and also thanks to all of you for your thoughts along the way. It's been a difficult time.
Thank you, Susan. Ted?
Wow, that's a tough one to follow there. So I did want to go back real quick to Pete's comments about the DOT and 128th. I guess I wanted to mention that anyways. You know, I do think the signage is kind of a joke, and you know, because I travel that all the time. I think it's important that we include Urbandale and make sure we're putting some pressure on the DOT. Surely there's a project manager, someone's in charge of this project that's got to know what the schedule is. And so we need to be able to provide a little bit better information, and them stiff arming us, I just don't think is acceptable. So I think if we include Urbandale in that, their residents are affected by it as well. Let's find out who the project manager is, and let's make sure we're having some real conversations about that, because I just don't think that what they have out there is going to work for the next 6 to 8 months, whatever it is. So with respect to MPO, the exec board met just yesterday. Got a briefing from the newly hired Capital Crossroads director, and she kind of briefed us on their Capital Crossroads 3.0 initiative, which is their 3 to 5 year action plan for the regional vision of the Capital Crossroads. And if you recall, there are 10 different capitals within the Capital Crossroads that hit kind of all different regional aspects for the metro. One that I took specific note of was within the governance capital. They are still kind of working on trying to get the regional stormwater ordinance that we essentially wrote in Clive adopted more across the region. She did note that 5 localities have adopted it. When I pushed her on that, because that doesn't seem like a very high number when you think about the full metro, she did say that did not include early adopters like ourselves, but was just the 5 new ones that had adopted within the last year. So her belief was that we're actually in kind of the double digits, 11 or 12 total municipalities or government entities that have adopted the ordinance, and their goal is to get another 5 this year that they think is achievable. So hopefully, we're not going to get everyone to get on board, but if we can get into the high teens for municipalities and local governments, that's a pretty good number where we're going to have some more standardization around the stormwater management. So hopefully that's going to be positive, and they're actively working on that. And then the last thing on MPO is that public hearing was set for the Scott Street downtown dam mitigation that's in conjunction with ICON. And that's going to be the real big one that is going to kind of really kind of show forward momentum on getting those dams mitigated, so that we can then start with the downtown development of the water trails. And so that's really kind of the starting point and the jumping off point for that. So that public hearing has been set for April 21st, and then they're expecting to move that forward soon after that. So that's all I have, John.
Well, thanks, Ted. Speaking of water, what's the temperature where you are?
Well, the Gulf of Mexico looks very nice. It is a little cool, I will say. It's, today was a nice day. It was in the upper 60s. So not quite what I'm hoping for, but it's
We're gonna have that
there's
next
no snow on
week
the ground,
here.
let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But
Poor
we
Ted.
won't have the Gulf of Mexico though in Iowa. So.
Well, thanks for the update. Anything else for the good of order? Did I miss anything else tonight? Well, if not, then we'll officially adjourn at 7:48.